To our listeners in the Corona Riverside area of California, Festool is bringing their roadshow to you on March 7th at Ganal Lumber from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. See new tool demos and learn more about the benefits of the Festool system.
Welcome to Shop Talk Live, Fine Woodworking's bi-weekly podcast. I'm your host, Tom McKenna, and with me this week are Mike Bekovich.
Hey, guys.
And Ben Strano.
Hello. Hey, Ben.
Hi, guys. Hey, I'm getting a little pumped, a little worried, a little scared that Fine Woodworking Live is coming up this April 20th through the 22nd. It's pretty exciting. We've got a great lineup. We're finalizing all the classes and the schedule and getting all the stuff put together and contacting our student exhibitors.
Are you scared because of the
scared.
The editor tank?
Well, that's part of it, but I'm scared. I'm worried that the microphone's not going to work again. That's what really is really keeping me awake at night. There's nothing worse than standing in front of 260 people and nothing happening with my voice.
The only thing worse is being the guy running back and forth trying to figure out what's happening.
It was good. It made you sweat a little bit.
It did.
But anyway, it's going to be a great show. It's booking up fast, and one of the highlights from last year, in my view, was the scholarships that we offered for the military folks, and the whole vibe that the giving of a scholarship lent to the whole event experience. I mean,
yeah, that's great.
It was really kind of a nice, very warm feeling, kind of a warm vibe, warm fuzziness. But
and the people who got it were really good guys.
Yeah.
And it was great to see them there.
Right, and the best thing is one of the military scholarships won a Rikon door prize at the banquet, which I thought was hilarious.
He won the planer?
Yeah, he won the planer.
And our boss, Renee, delivered it.
Our publisher drove to Pittsburgh to deliver the thing. So no guarantees on a personal visit
she was driving
from Renee. But anyway, so Ben, you want to tell people where they can go to get the scholarship?
And this year... This year, all three scholarships are dedicated to folks from military, active duty, retired, veterans, and I believe military spouses too. We'll have to. I think so. We should. Let's just make that happen. I don't know. All right.
Well, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. So, if you head on over to finewoodworkinglive.com/scholarship. You've got to get your entries in by March 9th. So there's just a little over a week after this posts. That's the cutoff point. But so we've got a 300-word limit on the essay, and just tell us what inspires you about woodworking or what you love about woodworking.
Yeah.
And
the scholarship basically covers, we'll get you there, we'll put you up, we'll feed you, and we'll teach you woodworking.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good deal.
It's
free, right?
all-inclusive.
Yeah.
So, thanks for your service.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on to Fine Woodworking Live.
And that's U.S. and Canadian.
Yes. We have
Except Quebec.
We have one Canadian sponsored scholarship, and then the other two are
IBC
United States.
IBC for the
chisels.
Canadian. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, IBC.
Yes. So
awesome.
Awesome. Yeah.
April 20th through the 22nd, and like I said, it's selling out quickly. So get your ticks and have some fun. I think one of my favorite things about the experience, and I'll move on soon, but I think what Live did for me was just seeing people sitting around and talking, like after the banquet Saturday night, like 10:30, 11 o'clock in the bar area, you just see people from different parts of the country just sitting at a table and talking about woodworking they never had met before. It was just such a good thing to kind of give people a place to kind of share their experience and their knowledge and gain knowledge, and not just from the presenters, but from fellow woodworkers and attendees.
Yeah. And at a place like this, because I've been to an event like this where I was, flew in, I was by myself, I didn't know anyone, but you have this common thread. It's like you've got, like if dating were like that, it'd be so much easier, where it's like the icebreaker is built in. You could just start to...
Yes.
If you could date based on talking about woodworking, my 20s would have been entirely different. But it's awesome because you can, everybody there loves woodworking, so you've got that going for you.
Yeah.
You're not that weird guy who loves woodworking.
Yeah, usually the
Right.
typical social function that I'm dragged to, you look for one person. Usually it's a guy who's remodeling his bathroom, and that's as close as it gets. It's like, okay, well, we can at least, let's talk,
Yeah, it's interesting. Or when someone asks you a question about, like, if you've built a piece, like if you're having people over or whatever, and then they ask a question about it, and then you start going into detail, and then you look at their face and suddenly realize they've shut down. They're already
Yes.
They have no idea what you're talking about. So
there's only two outcomes when you mention you're a woodworker, and they're both bad. Number one is, oh, what kind of furniture do you make? And it's like, that's a non-answerable question. Where do you even start? And the second is, I have a broken chair.
Can you fix it? Can you help me fix this picture frame? It's like having a pickup
Mom.
truck. And it's like having a pickup truck right around the time one of your buddies is ready to move.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, let's start off with a question. This one is from Jim, and Jim says, "How important is it to have an absolutely flat bandsaw table? I just bought a used 17-inch saw and discovered that the cast iron table is not flat. Is this likely to create a problem? If so, what's the best fix? I'm hoping I didn't just buy an expensive doorstop." So am I. Well, I remember I reviewed bandsaws a long time ago, and I checked for flatness. And on the models that I had looked at, these were 14-inch saws, and like I said, it was a while ago. The tables were pretty much flat. So,
And this gentleman's table is not flat.
no, how bad did he say? I mean, I can't remember what the tolerance for.
He's got pictures, and I mean, you're seeing a lot of daylight. I think it was up to a 32nd.
That's pretty significant, but I would guess that if you're flat near the throat, you're probably going to be okay.
And on this table, like most tables, there's a slice in the tabletop in order to insert the blade. And it's just the two halves on either side of the slice are uneven.
3/32.
Yeah, I mean, by the time you get to the blade and the back end, you're flat.
Yeah.
So usually there's that's what that little pin is typically for, to sort of align the two halves. So this didn't look like it had a pin on the end.
Is it missing the pin, Ben?
It doesn't, and he was a little bit. There were some other signs. The email was pretty elaborate, but there were some other signs that kind of leaned towards it. It looked like it might have been dropped or something at some point.
I mean, if he just bought it from a manufacturer, I would return it.
Yeah.
I would have.
But I think you say it was used.
Did he buy it used?
Yeah. So I mean, and it's not the brand bandsaw that he bought was not a cheap bandsaw.
Right.
So if the manufacturer sells a replacement table, or if they're willing to send you one, I think I would maybe go for that. But could you not just put like an auxiliary table over
Yeah,
it?
just get
it's
just quarter-inch piece of MDF, but use a little tape shim or something to hit the low areas so that MDF sits flat.
It's an isolation.
And it's not critical. You want it flat.
If you're doing joinery,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could see if it's really a problem and you're cutting a wide piece, like a curve on a wide piece, you definitely want it flat, so you don't end up with a beveled cut.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't. By the time you get through the blade, just throw an auxiliary slap a little top on there. No big
or
deal.
drive it up to Connecticut, I'll take it off your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if I don't know if there's a way to fix it other than like what you guys just said about putting a sub table on.
I did some research, and it looked like, in like issue 147, Tom Bagnall reviewed. It was a Rockler bandsaw table,
Yeah.
and from what it looked, they don't sell it anymore. But from what it looked like, it was basically their router tabletop, like that. That it was probably an inch thick particle board or something like that.
Oh.
And that's not going to have any give to it. That's not going to, and it had the miter track built into it. It had room for the fence to ride across. So, I mean, it wouldn't be that difficult to fabricate something like that.
No. Just depends on the type of fence that you've got, how it, if you can
That's
raise
true.
it up for clearance or something like that.
But I mean, you could look at it as an opportunity to, make the fence you want, because if you embedded some T-tracks into it or something like that, you could, easily have a fence that you could change the drift angle on. You could, put a low fence on, a high fence on. It might be a cool project when you're done.
You don't even need to build one with tracks. I did. I worked with an author. I think it was Patrick Sullivan was his name, out in California a few years ago, on a shop-made bandsaw fence for a 14-inch saw, and that didn't require any T-track installation. It was a pretty nice, easy build, and made a nice, tall, solid fence out of just Baltic birch plywood, and you essentially clamp it in place. It's a really nice solution, I think. But
I find that I like at the big bandsaw at work, it's got a taller fence. I find that I'm the only one who tips it over to the short fence so I can get the guide bearings down low enough to the piece.
Yeah.
Like I love having access to the tall fence, but I think most of the time I'm needing the shorter fence. And I always go in and it's always back up. It's like, but because otherwise you can't drop those bearings.
If you're right, if you're
down
near
like
the fence.
past 5 inches or something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Grizzly, so it's got a sort of a cast iron fence, which is maybe 4 inches high, but then it has an extruded aluminum fence which attaches to it, which is the long side is maybe 6 inches, and then the short is only like a half inch. So you can either go really tall, medium, or short.
Yeah, my Laguna just flips down.
Yep.
So you don't have to pull the fence out and
Well, the real problem I have with this question is I'm hoping I didn't just buy an expensive doorstop. This is going to make a worse doorstop than it would be a bandsaw, even without a flat table. So,
it is a bummer that if it's interfering with his work, it's an expensive mistake.
Yeah, no, it's nice. It looks like a really good saw.
bandsaw would make a better boat anchor, right, than a doorstop.
Better boat anchor.
I think it's. I don't know. It's large and it's heavy. You got to get this in your boat.
Yeah, I'm moving a bandsaw just for the sake of all right. We are officially
going deep into the well. Let's move on. I think get ourselves out of some trouble. Question number 2 comes from Bradley, and he says, "I made Todd Crenshaw's miter shooting board from issue number 261. The idea is that the plane is tilted 45 degrees away from the workpiece, and the plane side rides on a wood runner. I know that on a regular shooting board, the first few passes typically leave a little ledge that the sole rides against. Sure enough, when I took my first few passes with this shooting board, it removed a little material from the shooting board. Unfortunately, now the plane won't stay seated perfectly. With pressure toward the wood runner, I can keep it 45 degrees, but it's kind of annoying. When I don't apply pressure, the plane wants to tilt toward the workpiece. Did I do something wrong, or is that just how this shooting board works?"
It's just how it works. Your reference surface is the side of the plane, not the bottom of the plane. So you're exactly right. Just like when you're using a regular shooting board where the plane is bedded 90 degrees to the stock, the reference surface is not sort of the fence you're pushing up against. It's the base. It's the side of the plane.
It feels like the fence you're pushing up against is the reference surface.
Yeah, and that's like the biggest problem people have in technique is you tend to be, if you're using a regular shooting board, you tend to be pushing the plane toward the workpiece as you make a cut, and that's exactly wrong. You always want all the pressure down against the reference fence and a little bit in. Obviously, you want to stay near the fence, but it's always down. And on the 45 degree, it's exactly the same, but even more so because, to Bradley's point, it will tilt toward the workpiece because you've only got maybe just like 1/8 of an inch on the side of the blade uncut. So you did it right, and your technique is good. You just got to keep the pressure against the, on the side of the plane against the tilted fence, not on the base toward the workpiece.
Yeah, muscle memory kind of.
We have this shooting board. It might be from the article down at the shop.
Probably is.
Last week, and we'll hear more about my smooth move with it, but it takes a lot of thought at first. It takes a lot of muscle memory to erase.
Yeah.
When you're using this one, because it absolutely does tip, but it's really, really simple and really, really effective when you get it set up and dialed in correctly.
Yeah.
And I went digging last night, and there's a mess of different mitered shooting boards out there. There's this one. What is this one from? I closed my Google Docs.
That's more typical, where you attach an angled block to a regular shooting board to lift the part up to 45 degrees.
Yeah, this one's by Norman Perillo in 202, the Tools and Shops from 2009. And this one is probably the one that you're more likely to see most of the time. But the problem with that is if you have a very, very long piece, if your piece is, 4 foot long.
Or really wide, like a box, the case divider or something like that you're mitering.
Yeah, that whole piece is up in the air now.
Yeah.
And it's just unwieldy. And then there's the 2 fence model, which is a lot like the Todd Crenshaw one. I found the one on the video right now from this is from Tom Fidgen. But again, this one you're limited in the height of the stock you can use, or the thickness you can use, and it's a lot more complicated to make.
And it's exactly the opposite. So there's a fence on either side of the plane. So in this case, you are referencing on that 45 degree.
Yeah.
So, I've never tried that style.
It looks like a valid style and everything.
Yeah.
And but again, the nice thing about the Crenshaw one is it's so easy to make, I think.
Yes.
And this
Looks
one
easy.
would be a lot harder to dial in after the fact.
I think so. Well, I don't know. I would just screw the whole thing on and set my table saw blade to 45 degrees and boom, put it all at once.
Yeah.
Mind blown.
Got to go make one, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really do many miters in my work, so I don't have a miter shooting board. So
I recently started using the one down in the shop, the Todd Crenshaw one, and I definitely need to build one when I get it going.
Yeah.
It's or when I get my shop going. It's for me, like if you want that Matt Kenny type miter, which is a really really hard thing to accomplish. It's you got to get it off a hand plane or a chisel like he does.
Not just tight, but Matt Kenny tight.
It's absurd.
Yes.
It's absurd because like my first day on the job, he had two of his little boxes sitting on Betsy's desk, and I walked up and they were teeny tiny, and I didn't realize how small they really were.
Yeah.
And it was just that there's no room for error.
No.
Like any gap,
everything is magnified.
Is the full width.
Yes.
So I've been trying to get that Matt Kenny mindset when I'm dialing in miters, and it's frustrating.
MKM.
The Matt Kenny mindset.
All right. I guess we're done with miter shooting board. It's time for our first segment, which is Smooth Move. Do you want to go first, Mike?
Sure. So this smooth move came about because I'm not doing a lot of work in the shop at the moment, which kills me. And it's like, so I don't really have a smooth move because I haven't been doing enough moves to have my usual percentage of
Smoothness
among them.
Okay.
The reason why I haven't been in the shop lately is because I'm trying to wrap up a book that I've been working on, which
Dun, dun, dun.
is okay. I'm really glad to be writing a book. That's not a smooth move. Here's a smooth move. Okay, someone asks you to write a book on woodworking. Good. It's a lot of work. It's a big investment. It's really rewarding. Hopefully you end up with something that you're proud of. But don't convince the books department that you should lay it out yourself too.
Don't increase your workload.
It wasn't like I just said, hey, what if I lay it out? And they said, sure. If they said, hey, you're an art director, you already lay out. Do you want to lay out your book too? No, it was like, can I lay this out? No, absolutely not. Okay. You know what? I really think I should lay this out. No, that's not going to happen. I have to lay this out.
This is over the course of weeks.
And I just beat them down, and I feel horrible about it until they finally said, okay,
Here you go.
You can lay out your book. I said, great. And then, 30 seconds later, it's like, what have I gotten myself
What have
into?
I wrought?
Prime case of be careful what you wish
Yes.
for.
Well, if it's any consolation, it looks great. I saw one of the layouts is up on one of the cube walls in the books department. So
Really?
it's top secret. No one's really supposed to know. Renee clued me in on it. She's like, "Hey, if you want to go look at
Top
the book,
secret. It's just right there in the hallway.
Well, it's not in the main hallway. It's off. You go right, and it's down one of those little.
I think that I, throw out some little kind of fake layouts here and there because no one knows what this thing is. They have no idea what it is. I think whatever's on the wall is probably not even close.
It may have changed.
Yeah.
Well, it's fake news then, right?
It's changing as we speak. No, so I'm finally wrapping that up, but it's ironically or not, the reason I've probably spent less time in my shop over the last couple months than I ever have, and it's because I'm working on a book on woodworking, which sounds
It's about woodworking. Thank God.
contradictory, but
So when is it? When is your book due? Is it? It's the fall, right? Or is it coming out for sale?
it hits the bookstore, the Amazon, Taunton store, October 23rd.
Boom. And going back to Matt Kenny, he's also got a book coming out in April.
April, yeah.
And so we'll have a bunch of those copies at live
Yeah.
for people to get, and it's going to be cool.
Yep.
It's new and exciting stuff.
Yeah.
How about you, Ben? You want to hit up for
My
a
book
smoothie?
is not done. I can't think of what I would even write a book about if I had to write a book. Smooth move. All right. So I recently, I've been working on a new set of sharpening stones, and it was like, okay, I'm ready to commit to this. So I need to build a little box to hold them in. And I thought, all right, I'll just slap this together. And so I decided, though, in the process, okay, I want to get Matt Kenny tight miters, right? Well, I break out the Todd Crenshaw shooting board for my miters, and
TCSB, we call it.
Dude, that was quick. And so I start planing them, and it's working great, and this isn't dialed in at all. It's like 42 degrees or something. I'm not coming anywhere near 45 degrees. I was like, what is going on here? It's like, well, it was from a photo shoot, so maybe they kind of phoned this one in.
We never phone it in.
But so it was, maybe it just never got dialed in. So
Right.
I'm checking it. It's working. It's great. Well, of course, the lateral adjustment on your hand plane has something to do with the angle that you're going to be shooting.
It does.
Yeah.
It actually does.
Yeah. So you can get your shooting board dialed in perfectly.
Yeah.
But if your hand plane is nowhere near square, if the blade in your hand plane is nowhere near square, it just ain't going to happen.
Yes.
And so in the meantime, I only have one little side of this box, and I've just got barely enough stock for it, right? So I'm dialing it in, and I'm dialing in I'm shooting this little short side like an idiot. I should be dialing it in, shooting the long sides because I have room to spare. They're long. So I finally get everything, all the miters perfect. Boxes coming up square. And there's only two miters on this, two mitered sides. Because it's an open
Like
front.
one end is mitered, the other end is
It's just open.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if it's square as long as the stones fit.
So
but
it's the Photoshop
I wanted
work.
them to be square.
Yeah.
I wanted everything to be dialed in. And I wind up making that short end too short to fit the stones.
Oh,
So
that's easy.
the moral of the story, well, I actually had to start over because I didn't have enough
I figured
stock.
you'd cut the stones
You
narrower.
just mill the inside faces of your mitered parts and it makes it bigger.
Will Neptune, fixing woodworking mistakes.
Where are you when I need you, Mike? Are you kidding me?
He's right down the block.
No. Just open that sucker up.
Just text
So,
him.
like, if I start calling you at 7:45 in the morning,
I'm
this
awake.
is why, because
He's busy.
'cause
He's
you
writing
got
a book.
information like that at your fingertips. Yeah, I started over, but it was
But
good.
that's a really interesting point, though, about shooting boards. Is it's not just the jig; it's your plane
Yeah.
setup has to be good too.
Right.
And
And it's not just the angle on the end of the stock; it's the overall length of the stock. You've got to be right on about as well.
There's a lot of places to screw it out.
Yeah.
As with anything in woodworking, as soon as you start aiming for a pretty fine level,
Yeah.
it's easy to screw up. But
So you went ahead and remade it.
I went ahead and remade it.
All right.
Because whatever. But
But just the end piece.
no, because I remade the whole thing because I decided that I just want to space out the stones a little bit more, and the second one wound up better than the first
There
one
you
would
go.
have.
You're right.
But that's we've talked about this a few times about when to give up and start over, and that's like a perfect.
This was one
example.
where you didn't need to.
I
but
didn't
that's
need to, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't need to, but he did.
right.
But I mean, and it also highlighted for me. Jeff and I were recently in Salt Lake City shooting with Chris Gochner, and he always had a scrap piece of wood to test things out on. It's like he would pull out an extra piece of wood before he brought a smoothing plane down because he wanted to take a shaving and make sure that it was set right. Why do that on the workpiece when you can really screw something up?
Right.
I've got no shortage of scrap pieces, and I'm always using. I do the same thing, and I don't know if I just learned it. I think because I've made enough mistakes on the real workpiece.
I never do it. I never use just the piece of wood lying around to test my hand plane on or to test.
See, every time I sharpen anything, whether it's a chisel or a hand plane, I bust out. I have like two pieces of scrap that I test things on. One is a piece of pine, and the other is kind of maple, hard maple. I tend to, test things on, but kind of whatever I have.
It's a fantastic habit to get into, and I need to get that into my workflow a little bit better. So,
Well, speaking of bad habits, my smooth move is really kind of silly. I was like Mike. I haven't been in the shop as much as I want to. I have a big project that I'm planning to build a coffee table, which is not a big project, but it will be time consuming. But I'm waiting to launch my son's Eagle Scout project, so I don't want to kind of start something and then have to take a long break. While
this
I
isn't like
help him.
Elon Musk launch style, right?
No.
Okay.
No. Maybe later. But so I've been just having fun making little projects. I made like a little key holder, chain holder last month, and this month I was working on an end grain trivet. And I've made cutting boards before, but I've never made an end grain type cutting board. So I thought, well, this will be kind of cool. It'll be a good learning experience for me. I have this whole strategy of doing it. So I made this little thing, and I had one strip of Macassar ebony that was about a heavy 1/4 inch thick and about 1/2 inch wide. And I thought, wow, that'll be cool. I can make simple feet using this ebony strip. And so I had a maple block assembly, really kind of probably like maybe 8x8, if that. And I cut dados underneath it, and I cut them really, narrower than the strip that I had, the ebony strip I had. And I figured, well, I'll just work up to the fit. And just kind of lost track of my progress and was really close on one of the runners and had it just there. It was like one portion wasn't fitting, and I took like maybe 3 passes with my hand and went back, and the thing just like cloop, fell to the bottom of the dado.
Rattled around.
And I was like, are you effing kidding me? And I was just like, well, that was my one piece of ebony,
Yes.
and I blew it. And it was just, like I said, it was just 3 passes with the hand plane, and it just reinforces how close the tolerances are in woodworking, and that, the patience of, all right, 1 pass, fit it, 1 pass and fit it. But
especially ebony, there's no give. There's no
give.
compression. So
and there's tear out on that Macassar too.
Yeah.
But I did bail myself out, and this is kind of a I had a strip of Mikasa veneer. It was probably about 8 inches, now about 10 inches long, but kind of wide and really thin. And so I sliced a piece off and glued it to that one runner that I had and started over again. But I was just like, man, that was really embarrassing.
So you're a wood hoarder.
I accumulate and then I discard or burn. Like
How long have you had that ebony around?
At least 3 years.
Okay.
Was that since the office Christmas party?
The office Christmas party.
Was there an office Christmas party lumber grab bag that
There was.
I missed?
No.
Each department was given, like I think $150, like each magazine or.
That's right.
And to spend on a gift to be raffled off at the company Christmas party. So
with a tree, we had to decorate a tree.
With a little tree. Some
yeah.
people just put that many dollar bills on a little tree. Some people bought gift certificates or lotto tickets. Or I think the most popular one was like a gift certificate to like the local liquor barn place. But as woodworkers, we said, I know, why don't we all just make a little wood thing? I did a cutting board. John Tetro did chopsticks. Someone else did. What did you do, Tom?
I don't remember if I did anything.
And so we all sort of did that, donated that, and then we took the $150 and bought a big old stick of ebony and cut it up, and we each got to keep it.
No, okay, now, yeah, I was not part of that. No, I bought this wood. It's an unfortunate story, but there's a local professional cabinet maker who had passed away. I guess it's probably about 3 years ago. And his family had called someone on staff and said, hey, this gentleman passed away. He's got a shop full of tools and materials that the family's looking to sell to people who would use it. And so I went there with a friend who had a minivan, and I bought a bunch of ebony. He had a bunch of ebony, just scraps, and I thought, wow, I'll use this for something. And so I have just like a drawer full of ebony. I kind of reminded myself of Garrett Hack, who has, I don't know if you've ever been up there when he's gone to he has one wall where it's a tall bank of drawers, and he opens it up and there's just scraps of like gold in there, like
Yes.
ebony and rosewood and all this stuff, and he'll just whip out a piece to use for inlay.
Yes.
I kind of felt like that, but I'm not Garrett yet. But no, I do try not to hoard too much. I've been getting good about really identifying what's just a piece of scrap and what's something I can use down the road. So
I'm not that good about that.
you will when you start moving stuff around more. You will get moved.
Not
You
good
will
about
move.
keeping stuff or throwing it out.
About
Throwing it away.
out.
Yeah.
It's hard, though.
I've still got the little 6-inch cutoffs from the end of every board.
It's hard, and it really is, because I do have this instinct, and I think my dad had the same thing. And about I'll use this someday. And my father had this weird habit. He used to buy electric mowers, the corded mowers, and it used to drive me crazy because we had a backyard that had pools, a pool and trees and stuff. And so getting that cord around used to drive me nuts. But anyway, whenever we got a new one, he would pack up the old one into its original box and tell us, I may need it for spare parts. It would go up into the garage somewhere. And when he passed away, my brother and I had gone to my mom's house to help clear it out and stuff, and we discovered 3 boxes of lawnmowers that were buried in the back of the garage. It was just a funny thing. So I try not to save too many things.
Yeah.
The biggest hump for me to get over in terms of hoarding was like every time you get some sort of piece of furniture or office chair or anything that you have to assemble yourself, they always give you the Allen head wrench plus a couple extra screws here and there. So you get the whole thing together. Oh, here's like this little Allen wrench. I mean, actually, that's kind of cool. You can't throw those away. But you have an odd assortment of small screws. Oh, you can't throw those away. They're going to be good for something.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah. So I finally, it's like, no, I'm throwing away a screw.
Yeah, I do throw away those screws. I've gotten to that point too. when I was recently clearing out, I think last year, when I was really doing a big clean, we had rented a dumpster, so I took advantage of it. But I had drawers full of screws just from
random
stuff like that. I was like, what is this?
My dad's shop, he has his bin of screws and little oddball parts, and we would be doing something, and you go, let's see if Dad's got it in here. And then, nope. All right, let's see if Uncle Bob has it in here, where he had Uncle Bob's bin of screws and everything. Nope. Grandpa's got to have it. And it really was cool because you would find it in something and you'd always say, thanks, Grandpa, you know,
Awesome.
and it was a nice little moment, nice little memory. But there's none of that in my shop. I throw it. If it's not in my little bin that's labeled, you know, number 10 inch and 5/8 screw, if it's like, it just goes straight into the garbage.
If it's not in a box that's labeled, it's gone. That's the way I approach it. The one thing I do have a weird thing, I save washers because you never know when you're going to need a washer.
They're 5 cents.
Yeah, but they're right there. You know, I don't have to go back to the hardware store if I have a collection of them. Those flat washers, man. All right, let's move on to what are we doing? Oh, a question. This one,
we're recording a podcast.
This one comes from Michael, and Michael says, "I'm just getting started in woodworking. I'm a bit confused about how I should mark dimensions and cuts. When I do use a marking knife, when do I use a marking knife versus a pencil? I see both used in fine woodworking, but I've never figured out why one is picked over the other." That's a good question. Pretty simple answer.
I've wondered this myself.
You have? Mm-hmm. Well, we have.
Well, I mean, there's because you'll be shooting a video with someone and they'll run and get their marking knife or they'll run and get their pencil. It's like, well, you had a pencil right there.
Well, it's funny. We're
right
working with Tom McLaughlin on Rough Cut TV show, Rough Cut with Fine Woodworking. The producers and the camera people on the set, they're not woodworkers, and you know, I'm used to going to like photo shoots and being with woodworkers, and they go through all their processes, and I have questions, but a lot of times what they do makes sense to me. So one day someone asked Tom, "Hey, why are you using chalk here and not a pencil? You just use a pencil over there," and he explained it, and the way I approach it, and then it's kind of the way what he said is, you know, I use fatter marks for the rough lumber. As I get into the finer work, the point gets narrower. It's kind of, you know, I get down from crayon to pencil to knife. Kind of that's my approach.
You're a marking knife guy.
Well, it's everything.
Yeah.
I mean, a marking knife, a pencil line for me it's a guide. It's a suggestion. It's like, here's about where you're going to want to make a cut.
Exactly.
Or about the angle you want to cut this dovetail. A marking knife is absolute. It's not a suggestion. It's get right here on right up to it, not past it, not shy of it. So really, really accurate layout that I'm sawing or chopping to really accurately. It's always a marking knife, and pencils are just more just to get up to it. Because a pencil line, no matter how thin, there's still a thickness to it. So do you go to one edge of the pencil? Do you take the whole pencil off? Do you split the pencil? Kind of a thing.
Yeah, the marking knife is finite, the finite mark.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, if I'm cutting parts to length, if I'm measuring a part off of, say, a case, and then I have to go to the table saw, normally I'll sort of mark that with a pencil. And then you're always like, okay, as you're marking it, you kind of say, did I nail it? Okay, I need to cut to the outside of the pencil, or I can just like, I know I can cut into the pencil, so I'm going to start just by getting to the outside and then test, you know. So the pencil, there's always some exploration involved, I guess.
I used to work with a contractor, and you know, he would measure things, I would cut them, and that's a recipe for a disaster, you know. But over time, it was faster once I learned what keep the line, take the line, off the line. You know what his take the line meant compared to what my take the line meant.
Exactly. Yeah.
Again, when we were at Chris's, I was surprised to see him using a pencil at first for his dovetails. And then when he was doing the second cuts on his dovetails, the tails, the pins. Sorry.
He goes to a knife.
Yeah,
right?
he goes to a knife. I was like, well, why are you swapping here? He goes, because the first cuts you make
Don't matter.
don't matter. It doesn't matter at all. If I'm off, that just needs to get transferred and duplicated
Yes.
Right.
on my second side. And anytime there is the keeper cut, if he's cutting a 10-inch shoulder, that's marked with a knife. And, that because then he can chisel into that and make a little rut for his handsaw to cut into.
Yeah.
And it made a lot of sense to me all of a sudden. And then in preparing for the podcast, Chris Bexford has an article where it's like he says the same thing, where it's it's a layout pencil versus knife article. It's in 179. I'll put a link to it. But it just when something really 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 matters, when this is the only cut I'm going to make on it, I don't want to shave this down later. I don't want to take a shoulder plane to this. I don't want to use a knife.
Right.
I'm not fitting this. I'm going to nail it off the saw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that knife line is your reference point for your chisel.
Yeah.
Slides right in there. It helps.
Yeah.
Cuts
Yeah.
those fibers on the outside. I have done. Mike brought up a point about measuring parts to a case. I have a flat Japanese marking gauge that I had gotten from a friend, and I've used that like when I'm really instead of using a pencil in those cases, I'll hold the part in there, and I can hold that flat edge of that marking knife against the wall of the case or whatever to scribe lines. I've done that before, but I think for the most part, like Mike describes it perfectly. The pencil is a rough reference. The knife is.
I have
the
never
reference.
been able to cut to a knife line on the table saw. Like if you're cutting something to size and you want to fit perfectly and you mark it with a knife, can you? I don't know if I just don't have the control over moving a piece in that small amount.
Well, when I've done it, I still follow my safe practices because I'm always afraid of taking too much off. So I'll still register outside that knife line, but that knife line is my
And then
final
shoot to it or
pairing.
something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Typically, I'll chisel to it.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes down to I don't typically find myself cutting to a scribe line at the table saw because for handwork, it's all about layout. Like the layout, you are working two layout lines. For machine work, it's usually about setup. Like a fence is deciding the cut, not the scribe line. So for that, like if I'm doing 10-inch shoulders with a dado blade, I don't scribe that at all. I just measure between the fence and the outside of the blade, whatever distance that is. That's what that is.
That's a larger concept, I think, than I've ever thought about it at. It's like machine layout is setup.
Yep.
Handwork is cutting to the line.
Yep. Yeah, two different things.
So if you have to fit something into a pre-existing something, there's handwork involved for you.
No, I think it's just two different mindsets. It's like accurate machine work involves really careful setup to get it. And once you're set up, boom, you can knock out everything.
Yeah.
You don't have to lay out every single part. Where for
Right.
dovetails, by hand, you have to lay out every single joint. You have to lay that out. So a lot of times when people say, oh, I can, cut dovetails faster by hand than you can setting up your table saw blade. And the answer is, well, you might be able to cut them, but you have to lay all of them out. And if I'm cutting tails on the table saw,
It's one setup.
I lay it out once on one piece, and then I can bang everything out with little tick marks on my fence. So that's the difference between setup and layout.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But you've got 10 drawers then.
Yeah.
And Tim
You're
Coleman,
gonna win that.
Tim Coleman has a similar, not dovetails, but the way he cuts tenons. He dials in the machine setups perfectly so that he has a bunch of scrap pieces that he uses, and then once he's ready to go, he's just marking like
just go.
one work piece
Yeah.
to get the thing set up, and then he's off into the races.
But
Cool.
after all that, some people do cut precisely two pencil lines.
I am not one of them.
Matt Kenny, I think he dovetails.
He doesn't use a marking knife at all.
No,
anymore,
he goes
says.
right to a pencil. And actually, the North Bennett guys, like for instance, if you're sort of knifing around a hinge or like a half mortise lock or something, like you put your hinge down, and their take is that if you are knifing around something, that knife line is actually outside of the piece.
Yeah.
So if you chop right to your knife line, you're going to be a little bit oversized. Now we're talking minutely. We're talking for me, nah, that fits good. For North Bennett, it's like, no, that's too big. So they'll pencil around, like let's say a hinge or something, and then they'll take that off, and then they'll knife to the inside of that pencil line or measure and use a marking gauge to that. So they're really, there is an argument that if you knife to the outside of something and cut to your knife line, it's going to be maybe larger than what you want. But I don't. That doesn't work out that way for me. So
Yeah, I'm with you.
Steve Brown had an article when pencil beats
Right.
knife.
Yeah,
and
that's the whole
that's
thing.
the exact thing where,
Yeah.
you know, and part of it too is that if you're marking around a hinge, the bevel of your knife is bruising the keeper wood, really.
Yeah, because
And Matt Wada in his North Bennett Street Toolbox video, there was a lot of that where it was like he would just take the marking knife and put a little prick in there, and then come in with the square with the knife inverted, so that the bevel's
Reversed.
oh yes, yeah,
and it's
That's really interesting.
it's the finer
That's-
points of
yeah.
knifing. The idea that you have a flat and then a bevel, and you always want the flat side out, the bevel side in toward the waist. So and it's just like, okay, so this scribe line is 1/100 of an inch deep at. Okay.
yeah.
I get
But
it.
I love that mindset.
I do too,
And,
yes.
and that's one thing that it's like, if I had the means, like maybe going to North Bennett Street to learn those fundamentals right at
Yeah.
the beginning would
Yeah.
be like because they don't think about that.
Yeah,
That's just the way that they do it.
Yeah.
and that's cool.
And it sounds like they're teaching you to work slowly, but they're teaching you to be a pro, and you know, this is a really efficient way for them to work. And what's going to be great is
no, they work really freaking slow.
But
do they?
but okay, so Chris, I remember sitting there and he's sawing a tenon. He's Chris Gochner, and he's sawing a tenon, and I was like, "This is taking forever," but it fit off the saw.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay, he really took his time sawing that,
Yes.
but it was perfect,
Yeah.
and he didn't have to fit it. He didn't have to do anything. It fit, and it was like, that was really fast.
Yeah.
That
And it's
worked.
like, know where to take your time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, can we do that again, Chris? Because we didn't capture it. I was too busy watching it.
Yeah.
So
Well, what's going to be one of the things going back to live is we'll have a bunch of student pieces from North Bennett, so
Yeah.
we can ask them about pins versus tails first.
And you can look for the bruise of a
for
marking
the
knife
bruise.
bevel.
yeah, you bruised your keeper wood, I noticed. So, but that speaks exactly to the notion of most of us are not always happy with our results, and we tend to be pretty hard on ourselves, and we think in terms of, it wasn't perfect because I'm just not good enough at it. I just need to try harder or do it more. Like we sort of take it personally, when a lot of times the accuracy of our work is not so much our effort, but is much or even more to do with our process. Is the
Yeah.
process going to lead to a result you want? And if your process is one that the guaranteed outcome is something you're not happy with, the harder you work at that process, the better you're going to be at making those mistakes. And then you start to anticipate the mistakes based on your process, and you start to come up with fixes for those mistakes, as opposed to saying, well, maybe if I don't bruise my keeper wood, my hinges are going to be a lot tighter. So
Right, it's
the hard thing
process.
about woodworking, a lot of times that you have to sort of relearn and rethink the way you go about doing something, not just the effort you put into
Yeah,
doing
and
things.
that is one of the, as an amateur, I'm not making things on commission. I'm not cranking out furniture daily for clients. I mean, as an amateur, that's really a hard thing to kind of overcome or learn, is the process, because I often don't make the same piece twice. And so my process is always like I can relate to previous experiences based on like a different project, but it's not always exactly the same. There are always different wrinkles in every different project you make.
Yep.
So that was deep.
That sounded like a simple question.
It really did. But, nothing, I mean, woodworking it's not simple. And it's all about experiences and trying to get better and, making the most of your tools and your methods. All right.
Right on.
Let's move on to we're going to do another segment. This one has me a bit scared. And I'm going to let Ben throw it out there, but I guess, what are we calling this?
Philosophical woodworking question.
Philosophical woodworking question, the old PWQ.
I changed this up at the last minute because unfortunately you and I had discussed the other one at lunch the other day, and I thought we were a little bit too in the know for philosophical conversation regarding.
How is that? How can you be too little in the know for a philosophical conversation?
You know me. All right, so if you could only build one form for the rest of your life, what would it be?
One form. Bending form?
Yes. And for the record, I thought of this last night, and I'm still undecided.
It's one of two things, and they're really sort of almost of the same ilk. And it would be either the wall cabinet form or just casework. I guess just like casework.
Oh, my goodness.
What?
Barry and I were a little too inside your head.
Yeah.
Because Barry said, Mike's going to say casework. He's going to find a way out of the question. I said, well, no, I'm going to tell him it can't be casework. It needs to be a specific. Because he wanted me to add specific. I said, he's going to say wall cabinet.
Specific.
How does that make you feel?
So casework is too generic.
Yeah, casework's way too generic.
Yeah, I'll go wall cabinet just because you've got all the joinery you want. You've got any combination of open shelves, doors, drawers, any way you want to slice it.
Different ways to hang it.
Ways to hang it. You could make it big if you want, but what I like is you can get a ton of woodworking in a fairly small piece. I mean, even like a wall cabinet, like maybe 30 inches by 42 inches. I mean, that's a big wall cabinet. There's a lot of woodworking you can do in that.
Well, you teach a wall cabinet.
Yeah.
I remember going up to Bob's, and you were teaching a class, and I walked up to the cabinet, and I said, this has everything in it. I mean, every type of joinery you could throw at it.
Yeah.
You had in there. You had through tendons, you had dovetails, you had sliding dovetails, or maybe that was the only thing lacking.
That one probably didn't, but it had probably inset door, inset drawer, so your hanging door, frame and panel door. Yeah, it's everything. It's basically, it's everything concerning solid wood casework.
And there you go.
Yeah, no. I think if you started with wall cabinets and kept going, I would never get bored. I'd never run out of stuff to do. And it would just give me an excuse to buy more stuff to stick on my, my wall cabinets.
And the potters rejoiced.
Right now, I just need a bigger house with more wall space. Yeah.
Tom?
What?
What's yours?
Table saw. No, that was the old question.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. When I was thinking just when you threw it out there, I was thought, I just made a cabinet on stand, and it was a great experience, but it was a lot of work, and I loved it. But I think in this light, when thinking about the projects I've had the most fun making, I love making tables. I mean, I'm still looking forward to making a new coffee table, but I made like a small dining table for my back porch. I made at least 3 other coffee table designs. they're just, I think part of my feeling is that I find tables I can really crank out, like I can finish them really quickly, as opposed to like the cabinet on stand. I think part of it was because I didn't, I started off with kind of a rough sketch, and I was sort of building by eye with some sketches as I went. It was really a long process, longer than it should have been. But tables I can build pretty easily.
There's a lot you can do with the table.
Yeah, drawers. I'm trying to think of. I have so many sketches already of the coffee table that I want to design. It's kind of funny because now it's like, wow, I can build that, and then I can take one version and modify it to be maybe a nightstand or things like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Coffee table's a hard form. Anytime I try and draw up coffee table, I'm stumped.
I tell you, I built. And this is really funny, and this is not good woodworking practice, what I'm about to reveal. But years ago,
Brought to you by Fine Woodworking.
when before I started working at Fine Woodworking, I was still at Taunton. I was working in the books department at the time, and my wife and I had just moved into an apartment, and we needed a coffee table. So I didn't have a shop. I took a class at the local high school, these evening woodworking classes that they offer, and so I bought a bunch of pine, and the machinery at the shop was not great. It was not well tuned. So I put this table together, and my whole theory behind it at that time was I wanted something I could also put my feet up on. And so the whole design process, I had like different boxes that I was raising up to the height. But I built this table, and it was really before I knew about wood movement and really how to the proper way to attach a table. I just was like, I've got one more class. I've got to get this done, and I'm out of time. So I just screwed this 7/8 inch thick pine. It was all pine. I was painting it. I just screwed the top to the tops of the leg post.
Oh,
I just screwed that bad boy in on all 4 points.
Into the end grain.
Into the end grain.
Yeah.
I just drove it in, plugged it, and I covered it with this really nasty, glossy brown paint. And I was like, yeah, it's done. And I thought for sure, after reading more about, proper woodworking, that this thing was just going to pop and just explode on me over years. This thing has never cracked. It hasn't moved, or apparently, there's something that's really stable about it, and I still have that table. It's been 20 years, and it hasn't
probably
shown
the
any
glossy
sign.
finish.
I think sealing it with that, whatever I used, was what did it. It's totally sealed the wood.
There's a pine top as
There's
well.
pine
so
top,
there's a
pine
little
base.
bit of a compressive nature to
yeah,
it as well.
But it's just so funny. I didn't mean to get off track, but that was like one of the first coffee tables I made, and I just hammered it together basically, and this stupid thing is still around. Very primitive.
Cool. I'm bummed out. I want to say case on stand.
That's casework.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Well, it's kind of
casework's not the answer. Case on stand?
The case on the case
Really?
on stand is sort of a table. You get the best.
It's
you get the best of,
everything, yeah.
table, and you get the best of cabinetry.
Could be anything.
If I was Tim Coleman, I would just build case on stand after case on stand after case on
Yeah.
stand, and just sit there and look back and be like, I'm so good at this.
Yeah, because you look at
And he
Krenov, and Krenov did amazing variations on it. And you
Yeah.
think, okay, well, all my case on stands have to look like Krenov, but then you look at like Tim Coleman's work, and there's like, oh no, dang, there's like a whole other place you can take that.
There's the
So,
Coleman-esque version of
Yes,
it. Yeah.
so
It's really it's fun to see. You look at some of the preeminent programs and teachers, and the cabinet on stand is very iconic for the College
Yeah.
of the Redwoods, or now the James Krenov School. But it's great to see makers like Tim Coleman, taking that core form and then just making it their own.
right.
And it's really cool to see.
Yeah.
All right, Ben, how about
What you
you?
got, Ben?
Or is this
Chair.
cheating?
No,
He knew. So he's been thinking about this all night.
I thought table. I thought box, because seeing what Matt did to himself, brought upon himself with
Yes.
this challenge and everything. It's so simple, but you can go so many places. That's great, But I gotta say chair, and it's partially because I'm selfish, because you always need more chairs.
This is not true.
You're breaking chairs in your house?
No, 'cause all right,
You will
so-
run out of the need for chairs at some
Yeah,
point.
but it's like in a household, how many tables do you need? We have a dining room table. We have a side table in the living room. I can maybe use one more. And then I'm kind of tapped out on
Sofa
tables.
table, end table.
Yeah,
So what kind of chairs? You did a Boggs chair.
Yeah.
I think I would. Yeah, I mean, all right. So if I have to get more fine, I would say ladder back chair, just because I love the form.
Yeah.
There is, Brian has proven there's a lot of places you can go with it. But chair's safe too, because you can do Windsor chairs. You can
Yeah.
do.
That's like casework.
Yeah.
Anything you can sit on as a chair. So that's too broad.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
Ladder back chair.
Okay.
All right, I'm willing to apply the rules to myself as well. Ladder back chair.
If I had to go chair, it'd have to be Windsor, just because it takes you so long to get really good at it.
Yeah.
And then there are a lot of places you can go, either like the, really classic Curtis Buchanan stuff, or this sort of contemporary Peter Galbert, or
Or the modern Curtis Buchanan stuff.
or the
Yeah,
or
sure,
like
he
the
does some-
Bern Chanley, really
Yeah.
kind of pushing the envelopes. Yeah. So
Yeah, if I'm thinking of a chair, I like the idea. I'm going to be remodeling my kitchen this year, and we're getting an island, and I'm thinking, I think I want to make a couple of stools for the island, and I love the idea of do you remember the name of the gentleman who made the latest stool? He kind of freewheeled it. It was last year. Asa was the editor.
Oh, yeah.
Asa took the photos.
yes,
I don't remember him. He was he was a German
Yeah.
fellow. But anyway, I love the idea of taking a simplistic approach and, just not really trying to draw. Angles confound me. So I love the idea of just being able to eyeball stuff and drill
Yeah.
and fit parts and then
Right.
kind of build it sort of like
it's a more intuitive
Tinker
way
Toys
to
in a
build.
way,
Yeah.
So I'd like to do that approach with a chair. I don't think at this point, like a
Fabian
Windsor,
Fisher.
a Windsor would confound me just because of all the process I'd have to learn and relearn and
Right.
the riving portion of it. But it is fascinating. Chair making is, it is like, to me, it's like a pinnacle of being a good woodworker if you can build a chair that's stout, comfortable, lightweight.
And all you
You've
need is
made
a
it.
bandsaw and a lathe, so you could have this beautiful open shop, all this open floor space, no dust collection, no table saw, joiner, planer.
Shaving horses.
Yeah, you
Yes.
can even like Pete Galbert keep your dog in your shop, without kind of freaking him out with the jointer or the table saw.
Whenever we come across these really beautiful shops, it's like, oh, that's great. We got to feature that. Wait, where are all the
It's a chair maker.
machines? Oh, it's a chair maker. Dang.
Yeah, or Dave Fisher's shop. He's a bowl
Yeah, I
carver.
carve bowls.
Yeah.
That really looks really nice, but where's the stuff? All right, let's get to one final question. This one comes from Ken. Ken writes, what do you think of the glass disc sharpening systems such as the Workshop 3000, the Veritas Mark II power sharpener? I know you're fans of Waterstones, but this seems so much easier. And I had done some research. It was a while since we had reviewed these. I don't use any of those machines, so I can't give a perspective. But
I have a Workshop 3000.
we had reviewed both of those back in 2007. Tim Albers had reviewed the Workshop and liked it. So in the Tools and Materials department in the September-October issue, he gave it a thumbs up. And when he did a head-to-head way back in 2006, he liked the Veritas Mark II in a head-to-head comparison of those machines. And I don't know how many of those machines from that review are still available, but that's what we have in our
There's
archives.
like the lap sharp.
The lap
or
sharp. There was
something.
a Delta machine in that version as well.
Okay.
So anyway, that's what I found in terms of the content that we have.
I'll post a link to that.
But have you used any of those machines, Mike? I know we had a Workshop down in the shop, but I never used it.
There's no paper now.
I think you need to get really sharp once. You need a baseline before you can assess any sharpening system.
That's a good point.
You got to know what you're after. Like Ben, he just switched from Shapton's to diamond plates and honing compound. and I give him a hard time about it. But the thing is
Just the silent treatment.
yeah, no. But Ben, you
That's
knew
better than the other option.
Like before you switched, you kind of knew what sharp was.
Yeah.
So then after that, it's like, okay, here's another system. Can I get as sharp as I need to be? And then how difficult was it to get there? And then how difficult is it to get back to that again and again and again in a really repeatable way? So a lot of things that I think tend to be somewhat shortcuts are somewhat inhibiting.
I think the way I would approach it is, I know I have a jig for sharpening. I've got the Veritas Mark II. But it's I know when I know what I prefer to freehand, because there are some things that just I can do quicker freehand. But I have that process. I know my goal. Sometimes the medium that I use to get there is changing, and I'm thinking of changing. I'm thinking of changing from Waterstones to the Shaptons.
I know a guy who wants to sell some Shaptons.
And you've been trying to sell your Shaptons.
No, I haven't committed to selling them for quite some time, and now I'm ready to sell them.
But I think
I really want you to sell them, because at some point you can say, man.
I miss those
I know.
Shaptons.
I totally know. I know that's coming, but right now,
And I'm going to start sharpening in the office just when that happens.
right on Betsy's desk,
Right in front of when Ben and I have our meeting. Hey, what do you think? But I think Mike has the best point, is that you have to know the goal and what sharp is before you can really start experimenting. Because these machines, they're not any sharpening. Sharpening stones are expensive. Reasonably,
The most important thing is you got to get the backs of your tools flat and polished. Right. And I found that the work sharp, from what I've seen, any power system to get a back flat or polished, you really run the risk of rounding that thing over and taking out a flat. When you do that,
it's impossible to put it directly down on that spinning
yeah,
plate. You're dipping into it at some point.
Yeah, you're dipping in, so there's a round over. That would I think that's my biggest concern. But I get this question a lot. I use Waterstones and a honing guide. I teach Waterstones and a honing guide. And whenever someone says, what do you think about this system? I use Waterstones and a honing guide. I teach Waterstones and a honing guide. It just comes down to, this is a system that works for me.
Right.
And it tends to work well for the people that I work with. So
now, part of his question was based on budget too. And the work sharp, I was in the same spot. I bought the work sharp thinking this will do everything.
how much is a work sharp?
$199.
Yeah, but it's under 200.
Okay, so that's a set of Waterstones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was never able to get as sharp as I needed to.
Yeah.
And what I ran up against was the paper would wear out, and then I got to go get more paper, and it's no longer cheaper.
Right.
Whereas if you're doing scary sharp sandpaper on glass, the cost of entry is nowhere near $200.
Right.
I think the work sharp's great. I have it still. It's my grinder.
Oh, right. Yes.
It's a great grinder.
Yeah. I have a really expensive grinder called La Tormec. That's all I use it for. Yes.
But I don't think anyone would ever regret buying a work sharp, because it will grow with you. I just think you're going to use it less the sharper you want to get. So you're going to add to your toolkit somehow, be they Shaptons or oil stones, whatever. I think to get that super, super high polish, you're going to need to go to some stones at some point.
When I have students show up to my classes and I look at I can pretty much look into your soul by looking at your 1/2-inch chisel and how the condition
Why are
it's
you looking
in,
right at me right now? This is I'm uncomfortable.
how
Your soul is being
how it's sharp, how
exposed.
sharp it is, and what, because that it really dictates really the success you're having in woodworking, and probably how you're going about things based on the capabilities of your hand tools, based on how sharp they are.
But
Everybody is like thinking about their 1/2-inch chisel.
No,
right
it's
now,
funny
and
Mike brings that up, because I recently upgraded, well, couple years ago, I upgraded my chisels, but I still have my old blue marbles, and they're kind of my beater chisels. But I recently busted out the 1/2-inch blue marbles, and I was just about to give it a quick honing, and I looked at the edge, and I was like, oh man, that was a hack job, because that was the first set of chisels that I purchased so many years ago.
And now, 3 years later, you're...
Well, I compare it to the Veritas chisels that I just sharpened a couple months ago, and I was like, man, I had no clue what I was doing back then, because the bevel is like different directions, and
yes.
It's sharp enough to like remove material, but it wasn't a finely tuned tool, So I've got to regrind my blue marbles if I so desire.
Yeah.
It's just funny that you can see progression in your older tools.
Yeah.
And say, oh man, I was really bad.
Yeah. So I get students coming in with tools, and when they're all weirdly polished all over the place, it's like, I have a work sharp. It's like,
Yep.
Well,
the funny thing is we did one of the
they're not
best
a sponsor, are they?
Not anymore.
Okay.
One of my favorite sharpening articles was the Sharpening Doctor with Gary Rogaski, where we had two readers. Basically, we flew them out to Oregon to sit with Gary and learn how to sharpen better. And they brought their wares and how they sharpen, and Gary, hopefully corrected them.
Yeah.
I don't remember what issue that was.
It's just tough, and I understand. It's it's like you're looking for something. It's like all you hear is you got to get sharp in order to do good woodworking. It's like, well, how the heck do I get sharp? If I don't know how to get sharp, here's a machine. I can plug it in, zip. It's nice and polished. I take a good shaving. How is that a bad thing? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It's tough. Woodworking, it's hard. Some of those stumbling blocks, you got to persevere. It just thins the herd a bit, I think. So, but I do try to make things as easy as possible. If you can take a quick class, read a book and give it a try. I would recommend trying to get sharp by hand, either sandpaper or water stones, or in a honing guide. Try to understand what sharp is, and then you can decide if these machines are going to get you where you want to go.
It's such a fundamental part that before you even build anything, you've just got to get your system down and get sharp. And I remember it was a tough pill to swallow when I was struggling for a while with hand tools. It was like, it's all about the sharpening, and I'm just not good enough. And so I just worked at it until I had a system that worked for me. And I've tweaked it over the years, but I'm very happy with it. And I'm not intimidated by sharpening anymore. It's not like, oh well, no, that's not true. I do go, when I have to resharpen it, but it doesn't scare me. I mean, before I start a project, I know what tools I'm going to be grabbing, and so I do, a sharpening. It's a day's or a morning's worth of just sharpening. And to me, I've got some jazz music playing in the background. I'm in my shop. I'm not at
really
work.
painting a picture now, isn't he?
I'm not on Route 84, driving through construction. It's all good. I'm getting ready to do something fun.
Cool.
So, all right. Well, let's. We have one listener comment, and this comes from Amy Costello. And Ben knows who Amy Costello is. What's her?
Amy's awesome.
Chip Carver?
Chip Carver, Turner. She's in Salt Lake City now.
She's on our Reader's Gallery with that awesome little
that's right.
box.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I'll post a link to her Instagram. Everybody needs to follow Amy.
So I gotta put my reading glasses on. Amy had some good points about something we.
Yeah, Amy's taking me to task here. I like this.
I'll try to edit it for no, I'm kidding. So she writes, I was just listening to STL 156. The question about sanding scratches in a turning. I'm also an only moderately skilled turner who still needs sandpaper, but luckily I've had excellent instructors to help me on the way. You guys were spot on about moving the paper a lot so you don't get scratches from one bit of grit staying in place for too long. But Mike's comment about sanding at the highest speed possible was a bit off. Ooh. It's okay to sand at high speeds when you're in the low grids.
She's tiptoeing, but
That's fine.
carrying a big
okay.
stick.
It's okay.
She says, continues, it's okay to sand at high speeds when you're in the low grids and you're still trying to adjust the shape quickly. But once you're ready to focus on smoothing the surface, it's actually better to turn the lathe speed down. This is because at really high lathe speeds, it's difficult to move your sandpaper fast enough to prevent deep scratches from forming, just like they do if you hold the paper in one place for too long. The slower your lathe speed and the faster you move your sandpaper, the easier it is to create a random sanding pattern and to avoid creating deep scratches. I usually turn my lathe down gradually as I work through the grits, ending somewhere between 300 and 400 RPM. When I get to 400 grit, if I'm sanding a really dense wood, I might go as high as 1200 grit at the same speed. Just thought I'd throw in my 2 cents. You guys do great. We should probably put that whole comment on the
I'll put it
site.
in,
Yeah.
'cause that's a really great
it's really-
explanation.
It's a really good point. Thank you, Amy.
We'll start forwarding all the turning questions to Amy.
Yes.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Please spread the word about Shop Talk Live to your woodworking friends and neighbors. Shop Talk Live is dependent on your questions and comments, so make sure to send them in to shoptalk@taunton.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that thumbs up button. Finally, you can keep up with Fine Woodworking on Instagram and on Facebook, and look for all of us on Instagram as well, and at Fine Woodworking Live, April 20th to the 22nd. Thanks for listening, and have fun in the shop. It's weird not having Jeff in front of me or people in front of me. We should get a stick with Jeff's face on it, so when he's not here, we can tape it to the chair or behind the camera.
That
So
wouldn't
at
be
least
weird at all.
I feel like I feel like I'm talking to someone. I miss him.
I miss Jeff too.
Deep thoughts on Shop Talk Live. All right.